Since the shootings in San Bernardino, we have seen a rash of attacks on mosques and Muslim-associated businesses. In Hawthorne, California, someone spray-painted a mosque with the word Jesus and other symbols on Sunday. Police found a device that looked like a hand grenade in the driveway. It turned out to be a plastic replica. This was just one of two mosques vandalized in Hawthorne. Both are being considered hate crimes. In Grand Forks, North Dakota, investigators are trying to find a man accused of torching a Muslim-owned restaurant last week. The fire came days after someone painted a Nazi-style symbol on it with the words, "Go home." Investigators have not released a motive yet. They identified a suspect and are trying to track him down. And in Coachella, California, someone set fire to the Islamic Society of Coachella Valley on Friday. Police arrested Carl James Dial Jr., who now faces hate crime charges. How is the tone of the conversation the nation is having about Muslims and Muslim Americans contributing to some of these events? Joining me now, Jasser, who's the author of the book A Battle for the Soul of Islam and a former U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander. Good to have you with us tonight, sir. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be with you, Erica. Thank you.
I know you recently founded the group Muslim Reform Movement because you believe there is a voice missing in the conversation. What or who is that voice?
Well, basically, our country is being torn between two very extreme ends that, you know, to be frank, one is sort of the bigotry of low expectations, where Islam is peaceful. We sort of take the narrative from Saudi Arabia or Iran. And the other one is bigotry of no expectations, which is all Muslims are the problem. And in the middle is the vast majority of Americans that are getting confused. They've been hungry for the voice of reformists, and that hunger is turning into starvation and anger. And I think we sort of need the adults in the room, Muslims who are not all about grievances and all about sort of stoking the flames to raise money, but rather those of us who want to fix the problem and own it. And our Muslim Reform Movement, Erica, is about that. We are left and right, bipartisan. We said, you know what? There is a core root cause that is leading to this. It's not just the violence when they put on the soldiers' gear and the weapons, but it's long before, when they put on the jersey of the Islamic State, when they hate America, when they're anti-Semitic, when they treat women as second and third class citizens. All of these large movements of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, the Khomeinis in Iran, the core problem is the inability to separate mosque and state and the hate for Western secular democracy. And we want to defend the ideas and say that, you know what? Islam is in that time in history when we have to reform the ideas of theocracy and come to terms with modernity. And so far, the conversation has prevented the strategic engagement of reformers.
So separating those two things is one part of the equation. But in this country, it's admittedly a much different conversation. And so to have that conversation here, I would venture to say Americans maybe aren't as concerned whether or not they should be about learning the differences between what's happening in those countries. The concern for many Americans is what's happening here. So how do you change the conversation here at home for people to better understand, you know, who a follower of the faith of Islam is?
Well, the conversations, Erica, are not in a vacuum. Just as the San Bernardino shooters, the Chattanooga shooters, the Fort Hood killer, etc., learned what they did from abroad, radicals, that some of whom were homegrown but got the ideas from ISIS in the Middle East. When we have conversations here about the Muslim community, our 3 to 4 million Muslims in America, when we talk about Muslims, it's resonating with a quarter of the world's population that will either use it against us or with us as we advance liberty. So the dialogue about Muslims, we just need to thread that needle and say, you know what, Islamism or theocratic Islam is the problem, but liberty-based Muslims who believe in Western experiments have to lead that reform. So yes, the conversation in America, I think, with Muslims needs a tough love. One first is love, is that we serve our country in the military, the police, we love it, we're going to be the warriors for freedom to defend this land. But two is a love in that you embrace Muslims to lead that, but we're also tough in that not giving them a pass. They have an opportunity here in America to do things they can't do in Syria, like my family, or in Egypt, because we have freedom to express ourselves against the theocratic movements.
Real quickly before we let you go, on your website it says, ideas do not have rights, human beings have rights. What do you mean by that?
Well, so much of the attacks, look at Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris. They didn't want them to criticize the Prophet Muhammad. The inability of Muslims to speak up has been suppressed by governments like Saudi Arabia. The radicals don't come out of nowhere. They're coming from cultures where it's not about human rights, it's about the religion having rights. And we want to say, you know what, if we're going to reform, ideas don't have rights, human beings do.
Interesting for you to join us tonight and really appreciate your perspective. Jasser, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Erica. Appreciate it.
Still to come.